My guest today is Barbara Boyle. She is the author of a new memoir called Pinch Me, Waking Up in a 300-Year-Old Italian Farmhouse, which all I had to hear was Italian and farmhouse. And I knew I wanted to read this book. I am a sucker for these kinds of stories, these transformational stories when they have to do with moving to a brand new place where you don't know people or, in Barbara's case, systems and how things work. But before this, Barbara had a long career in advertising, working for worldwide, very well-known companies such as Saatchi and Saatchi, advertising for people like Procter and Gamble and all the big worldwide names. So she's in a different stage of her life, which is what we're going to talk about. Let's jump in. Barbara Boyle, welcome to the Slow Style Home Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a treat to be here. It really is.
I'm so glad. I don't want you to give away all of the fabulous stories that are in the book because it's really fun to read. I read it fairly quickly because you're just absorbing the wonder of it all as you were along with you. So that was really delightful. But do tell us what prompted this
What world?
crazy idea of moving halfway around the world or a quarter way around the world, something like that, from San Francisco to Italy and taking on a renovation project after a full career.
It was a little bit like Alice tumbling down the hole into this wonderland of where am I?
Yeah.
This is amazing. It was unbelievable from the first moment and even to today. Every time I'm there, something amazing happens at least once a day, sometimes twice. So it called to me. I didn't find it, it found me. We were just traveling through Europe. We were freshly married. This was our honeymoon, 9 months after the wedding. And kind of had always an eye towards maybe someday we would like to live maybe in France, or my husband said Italy. I didn't know a word of Italian, so I was pushing for France. So on our honeymoon, we went to Provence for a few 4 or 5, 6 days. And because we were there and he likes pizza, he says, let's look over to Italy as well. So I literally could have taken a dart and thrown it at a map and said, this looks like a pretty good town. I think it might be near a lake district or something. And I found a charming hotel on the internet. And as we were driving up to it, the rain was terrible. The freeway was boring. It was flat and dreary. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? But as the rain cleared and we reached the top of our little hill town and checked into this amazing, charming hotel with this beautiful young woman who made us feel like family in 2 seconds. The vistas literally from where we were, there's rolling hills, vineyards. Oh, and then there's the mountains, the
Yeah.
Alps, for like 360 degrees. It
Oh,
is crazy pretty. So we fell
yes.
in love with that, but mostly, and the longer we're there, about 10 years now, it's the people
Mhm.
are extraordinarily handsome, charming,
Mhm.
young people, old people, men, women, kind, funny, caring. They show up at our house about every week or two with some kind of gift.
Oh,
A plate of fresh made pasta, eggplants from the garden, truffles from their backyard. I don't know why they can't help themselves. And after visiting once and coming back the second time, we said, let's at least try a fixer-upper. Because the homes there, as you may have heard, are
yep.
quite reasonable by
Yep.
American standards, by California standards. And we found this total ruin, literally a ruin with, you looked up at the roof, you could see the stars, you could
Right.
see the rain coming down, and it was still beautiful, the setting. It was made of stone. The whole 300-year-old structure is made of stone that had been put in place over the years. What's not to love? So
Yeah.
we said, I don't know, I'm willing. If you're willing, let's try to fix it up. And we went back to San Francisco and said, what have we done?
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
had,
I think that's what's so amazing is that you weren't really on a house hunting mission. And then I think the bravery it took to say, you know what, let's get real about this. Let's get serious about this. And it seems like you were both pretty much on the same page, which is great.
yeah, we aren't on all topics on this one. Yeah, you said it so well. It was a longing. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be here. just pulled to me like a
Mhm.
magnet.
Yeah.
And my husband too, would always, from our first date, talked about, man, maybe someday we'll live in Europe, but it wasn't like we were running from something in the US. It's not like
Right.
we were trying to prove something. We just both fell in love at the
Yeah.
same time with this little town. But I told my husband at dinner, I'm getting tired of listening to us say, someday we'd like to live in Europe.
Oh,
It's getting old. We're either going to do it or we're never going to do it. We're young
right.
enough still,
Yep.
but old enough. And your work is winding down. My work I can do at will. Now would be the time. And so when we
Yeah.
saw the house, I hit him in the arm. I said, this is it. He goes, you haven't even seen the house yet. I got to tell you, this is it.
Yeah.
I
You
just
just
felt it.
knew.
Yeah. There were super nice neighbors, our next door neighbors who happened to be selling the house because they inherited it from the woman who had died there.
Hmm.
After living there from the day she was born till the day she died, 100 years.
Mm.
She left it to them and they said, maybe we'll sell it for a song. Really, it was a song. And I said, this is it. This
Yeah.
is where I can see me spending the rest of my years. I really could.
And this was a beginning too of the development of your friendships with so many people that you talk about in the book. The woman at the front desk of the hotel that you first stayed with became a good friend. These sort of, they weren't landlords, but they were the people you bought the house from became good. They were now your neighbors, became good friends. What about leaving your lives behind? What was hard about that? And I want to just note, we are not seeing the Alps outside your window behind you. We are seeing San Francisco. So you are back in the States, in San Francisco temporarily. So what was the hardest part of the leaving? We'll talk about the hardest parts of the creation of the new home, but what were the hardest parts of leaving?
The actual really truly hardest part was my husband's mother was in her 90s and in a really great facility and very happy. And she was very gracious about us leaving. But we always wondered every time we got on that plane, will we see her again? And we did for many years. And so that was sad and poignant. But I'm of the mind that the world is pretty small. I've lived in different countries, Paris and Germany, New York, San Francisco, and I have friends in each of them, in that I have a network of people I love. It still felt to me accessible. Yeah, it's a long time to takes really 24 hours to get from where we live to where our family is. That's
Yeah.
by the time you get in the car and it's a bit of a hike. And so when there's a crisis, it's a concern. But in terms of everyday life, our friends, our family have been to our home so many times.
Oh,
We came back a lot in the beginning. Even when we first bought it, we weren't 100% sure we'd be there full time. It was really after, let's just try a year there. We
yeah.
rented our place out. And after a year, we both said, let's do this longer. I want more. We're
Yeah.
coming and people were intrigued and our friends were gracious about coming that long way. We really appreciated that. So
Of course.
we were happy to put them up and it was a big old barn. It really was a 300-year-old Italian barn. So we have room, which was nice. And that seemed to all work, but it was hard to actually say goodbye to her. And my husband's siblings were less keen on it at the beginning. Now
Yeah,
I
I was
think,
wondering about that. Was there, because I think a lot of people listening who have older parents and would like to make a big life change,
mhm.
they would feel a lot of guilt or be made to feel some guilt around that. So how did you deal with that?
I think we were exactly that, made to feel a little guilt. And my husband had a long talk with his father before he had died. And he said, I envy you, son. I just love the life you're living. I think it's
Mm,
great. So he knew
mm,
that would be good. And we talked to his mom, and she says, I think it's wonderful. You should go. And we
yeah.
called her frequently. We ended up during COVID, we saw her as much as anyone else did, if not more. When we finally lost her, we were right there. We were in the city when
Oh,
because it was thanks to COVID, we were,
oh,
yeah, because we couldn't go for a while. The the one twist is, and it's not my real life twist and plot twist in this is that I did get breast cancer after a while. So that was the whoops, not on the agenda.
yeah.
But it meant we had a full year back here. Not that I was real social that year, but people and we were close. And then I had to be back every 6 months. So that was a given. I had to come back every 6 months for the next 5 years. And obviously I'm still here and I'm considered cured and it all worked out. But It was you adapt. I like to say you leave breadcrumbs behind. So you don't go so far or for so long that it doesn't make sense. You don't just one day jump up and move to Siberia.
Mm-hmm.
You try it for a while, you go back and forth, then you stay for a year, then you stay a little longer, then you just keep that thread
Yeah.
connected.
Well, I
And
think,
it's cutting off your arm. It really isn't. You're stretching, but you're not breaking.
oh, I love that. I love that. That's so helpful to think about. This is not the end of something when you are starting at the beginning of something else.
I don't feel that. I
Not quite
feel
that dramatic.
no, if anything, it just expands your world and your friends. They now feel very comfortable here. Our neighbors know our friends and our kids and ask about them. They sent emails wishing us happy Thanksgiving from Italy last week. It was great.
Yeah.
I think it's a growing and a stretching and a improvement for everybody, for us, for our family and our friends. And
Hmm.
finally, my husband says, you can't just sit around all day and wait for someone to pass away or for someone to grow up and go to college. You have to live your
Hmm.
life. And
Yeah.
the people who really love you are pretty adaptable and pretty keen to be a part of it. So
It doesn't hurt that you have a fabulous place for people to visit. Now, I know it's a little bit out of the way. You say this in the book several times. Okay, we're not in Rome. We're not really even in Tuscany. We're up even further, but still, it's
the middle
gorgeous.
of
Yeah.
nowhere is a good
Middle of
place.
nowhere, but it's gosh, it's you have a pool. That's a draw.
The pool is essential when it's so hot in July and August. That's our air
Yeah.
conditioning, and it's
Yeah.
great. And the
Right.
kids learned to swim there last summer.
Oh, oh,
The part of it was because it was so inexpensive. You could never have a home like this. I don't think they even exist in America, but we
right.
certainly couldn't afford a home like this anywhere that I know of in America. Three big bedrooms that we were able to put bathrooms in each, a couple of studios and guest areas. And we have a little apartment attached onto it that we Airbnb it if we're
Mhm.
not having friends. And that's
Mhm.
fun. But yeah, the plan was we have three boys, two daughters-in-law and some grandkids, and probably a third set of all of the above coming soon. So we
Okay.
wanted to have lots of room.
Yeah.
We do. And a pool. You
Yeah.
know, the pool, it's funny you brought it up because my husband said, and we need a pool. And I looked at him and said, okay, this doesn't sound like me, but it's not in the budget. And you're crazy and we don't have the room. And he was 100% right. And I was 100% wrong because we just made
Oh,
a long, thin pool on our
yeah.
grass where the bocce ball court would have gone.
Right.
So we can do laps and it's not very deep so the kids can swim. And
Right.
it's the best part of the house. Even in the winter, you can look at it, you're looking at a water feature. You'd be
Right.
surprised what you can stretch to include that you don't realize at
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah. And I think that idea of a place to go outside that is multi-generational, I think is quite nice. I want to ask one more question before we move on to the house itself. I want to ask a midlife question, and I'm being very selfish here
Ah,
because I'm asking for a friend, and your kids leave, and or you try to get them to leave, and you go, "What's next? What do you think you
exactly.
would have done if you hadn't done this? Did you need a big project in your life at this time? Did you know that?"
We had talked about, because we'd been together for 10 or 12 years before we married, and then we finally married, and both said, okay, when we do finally leave our jobs, we both had jobs that were pretty all-encompassing. When I left mine, suddenly marriage made sense and it was great. But we said, we're going to need a project of some sort. Something, I don't know what, something big to fix up, something fun, a second home, who knows, a course in fine art, something different to keep us alive, curious, to keep our brains cooking, to
Mhm.
keep us interesting to ourselves and to others.
Yeah.
And the thing about a home is it is a draw. The kids are like figuring out how can we get to Italy? Can we go
Yeah.
once or twice this year? And they know they have a free place to stay. How many people do you know have a free place to stay? Someplace really beautiful and interesting that's a
Right.
hop to all kinds of different places.
Well,
And I
especially in
think
Northern Italy. You're right up against the rest of Europe. Yeah.
exactly. We're an hour from everywhere, from London, from Geneva, from Amsterdam. And so that's a draw for them.
Oh, yes.
It's a funny thing. They don't feel neglected. We sold our home and we're quite content to be in Italy full time, knowing we'd go back and forth at least once a year, probably twice, to see the kids. And of course, our doctors still remain in San Francisco or certainly in America, because the medicine is better. Then as my book got finished and got published, which was amazing, and is coming out, I realized I'm going to need a foothold here in San Francisco for a while to get that launched and birthed
Ah,
and out in the
okay.
world. So
Okay.
we did take on a couple months ago an apartment here, which is
Yep.
wonderful for us.
Yep.
And we just had it full of kids for Thanksgiving, which was cozy compared to Italy, but lots of fun. And we'll see them again in Italy. We'll see them at their place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
also,
making it all sound so doable.
it
I think
is.
everybody is going to pause the podcast right here and run to Google and say, find me an Italian farmhouse. Let's talk about the house itself. And I don't want to give away too much. Give us the before and after. Paint a picture for what did it look like when you first, like you said, there wasn't even a front to it.
As I got out of the car, the first time we saw it, I fell absolutely in love with the sort of proud sense of home, this big, giant 2-story stone structure with this gorgeous wooden roof and surrounded by grass on this little knoll with a little breeze coming up off the valley and the orchards. And I looked around and there was the perfect view for a sunset with the mountain in
Mm,
the distance and the valley. It was so gorgeous. But when I went inside, I was amazed at what a disaster it was. There was literally mud up to your knees down in the sort of 8 steps down, which became my husband's wine room.
yeah.
To get upstairs, it was actually the hayloft, so there wasn't even a subroof. You just saw the roof of the barn and you could see holes and the rain and the spider.
The rain,
There
snow.
was an old rickety ladder leading up to the hayloft, and I would go up 2 steps and said, I've seen enough. My husband said, don't you want to see the view? I go, no, I'm sure it's good. It's great. I'm not
Yeah.
climbing up there. I never saw it until it was done. I never climbed up
Wow. Wow.
until
Yes.
the stairwell was in place. It
Yeah.
was rusted out, falling down, and so full of love. And so,
Oh,
our builder said it has a soul, an anima. You can feel it. You really can feel
Anima.
this pride and love, and yet at the same time, humility. And it's so
Oh,
connected to the earth. And it's just spiritual. Just everything
yeah.
about it was
Yeah.
perfect and intense and lovely, but a complete mess. We found this fabulous builder who said, I'm great at stones. And we looked at some of the work he'd done. He is great at stones, and we had a lot of them. And he says, what you do first is you take off the roof. Okay, I
Mm.
would have thought that's the last thing you do, is that you leave the
Hmm.
roof, build it, and then so he takes the roof off, and it really looked like Pompeii because there's nothing but some stones and nothing.
Right.
And he put on a real solid roof, and that kind of held it together. And from there, we started building in. Actually, it didn't even have a foundation, so we had to jerry rig a foundation, put in windows, walls, flooring, and now it looks like a home. When I do look back, now that the book is out, and I'll look at the before and afters in the book, I'm like, what were we thinking? It's pretty crazy. Did you see literally the pictures with the QR code, the befores and afters?
Yes. Yes. I love that you include QR code. So after every chapter is a QR code, and she's showing you the stages of the whole building process. So for people who are reading the book, and I highly suggest you get this book, you can actually follow along. So they're great. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, no. And they all, when they see the before pictures, they're like,
Yeah.
everyone, it's pretty jaw-dropping, but
Yeah.
it's doable. You get the right people. We were lucky we found that great builder. Um, and he had the right team, and they're honest, good people where we live. For
Mm,
the most
mm,
part, they're wonderful. So
mm.
we got a little bit lucky, but I think it is, as you said, it is really doable.
And the people in the community, honestly, I feel like the book is as much about them and your experience in enveloping your in being enveloped by this community as it is about the house itself. And I really enjoyed that part, especially because one of the things that I have always wondered about moving somewhere completely new and building or restoring a home is the loneliness factor, especially the older you are and the more settled you are with your friends and your life and everything, maybe the harder it is to pull away. But it does sound like this is a town, a community where people care about craftsmanship. There's a right way to do stone, for example. And of course he cares about that. Of course he knows how to do it. It's almost a part of the ethos of that community, no?
Who am I to question how to build a home that lasts? They have these castles that have been there since the 13, 14, 1500s, all made of stone,
Yeah.
all gorgeous. And in America, we think, oh, how quaint, it's made of stone. There, it's what you do. And they're
Yeah.
really good at it.
Yeah.
And they take their time with everything. That you take a nap, you have a really good meal. You don't eat a lot, but you eat really well. You always lose weight. I do when I go there, weirdly, because the food is
Love
so
it.
good. And they just take their time and they do it the right way. And it ends up not taking any longer than you would think.
I want to read a section from your book that really resonated with me, and it's along those lines. Spending time in Italy was teaching me firsthand how something as primal as eating and as simple as shopping, as essential as being part of a small community, creates a life. Living like this more slowly, more purposefully, and more enjoyably changes who I am. And you are my guest on the Slow Style Home podcast, and slowing down and appreciating where things come from, how they're made, how we use them, little moments in life that can give you great periods of delight. All
And
of that is
purpose.
important.
And purpose. Yeah.
Purpose.
They have beautiful lives. They have families that are important to them. They laugh, they stop and are willing to stop on the street and chat for a few minutes if they see you. They make a point of going out of their way to strangers and getting to know us. They found us utterly interesting and charming, which we're not always both or either. They were so gracious and
Not
well.
a lot of Americans there, not a lot of tourists there, period. So, yeah, you were a
There were
novelty.
absolutely, there were almost none, but they take the time to appreciate what they have. They're not doing a lot of whining. They don't talk a lot about politics that I ever hear. They don't talk
Mhm.
about what's not similar with others. They tend to talk about what we have in common, which is
Mm,
really
that's
important.
refreshing.
It's refreshing. Yeah, as divisive as we've been as a country, it's nice to be in Italy, where we're
Yeah.
all just either Americans and Italians, but we're all just there enjoying the wine, the food, the weather, or
Yes.
complaining about the weather.
Yeah, yeah. Wine and food, really. You cannot go wrong. All right, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the inside of your home and what you've done with it to make it your own. I know you're not an interior designer, which is great. It's actually refreshing to have someone who is not really in the design sphere on the show, because I care about what regular people do to their homes to make them feel like it's personal, it's meaningful. So tell us a little bit about, how would you describe your style?
That's nice of you to say. I was a little nervous when I heard I was going to be on this because I thought, boy, I'm not a designer. I'm not an interior specialist. I was intimidated by your podcast, but nice of you to ask. What I like to say about the house is it told us what to do and where to put things in many
Mm,
ways. There was the right place for the living room. We
mm.
couldn't find a place for the kitchen, so we were able to add 10% on. We made the kitchen as modern and convenient as we needed to be. It's a normal refrigerator, nice gas stove, nice big giant farmhouse sink that I had to really arm wrestle my husband for. He wanted a stainless steel one, and I said, I'm
Not in
sorry,
this 300-year-old
not in
farmhouse.
this house. You don't have stainless steel. And I love the big, we had to hand carve the marble stone because they didn't have one laying around in Rodino.
Right.
But they had a huge marble place, so we picked
Gosh.
it and it broke twice. Finally, the third one stayed and works.
Wow.
And I have a nice handled faucet. The walls are stone, literally from ground to top, and the ceiling, it's not 50 feet, but it's close. It's real high. It's timbered wood on
Yeah.
top. As for art, it has been things we find. We have 3 watercolors from Venice when we go to Venice in the
Oh,
kitchen. And I have a beautiful old Madonna with a halo on the stairs going up, just from Torino one day. We thought, she looks Italian. We're not particularly religious, but it feels like it belongs there. We
yeah.
have prints from France. We have anything that we encounter in our travels, which are many. We've started collecting beautiful ceramic platters, hand
Hmm.
painted from different parts of southern Italy. And there was another one. Anyway, a couple of towns that are famous for making ceramics. Puglia,
Yeah.
we got one beautiful one in Puglia, and just hang them on the stone wall, and they bring a real pop of color.
Yeah.
And we had for a while, our kitchen table was an old door we had found in our out one of the outbuildings. And we turned it upside down and made it a table, but it got so rustic and their kids would leave crumbs in it. As beautiful as it was, we put it
Yeah.
outside and then brought a nice, super modern Italian glass top, which is really
Oh,
cool. And the glass, my gosh, picking the lights for the whole place is incredible. Their lights are so witty and bright and modern and fun. And that's a nice contrast, the real bright, sassy lighting. My daughter-in-law came to visit when we were still in the early stages of putting it together and was out in the back and uncovered this huge pile of hand-stained Piemonte tiles that had just been discarded,
mm,
which were gorgeous and faded, a rust and a blue and a gray. And it was just the right size. We have just at the right amount to make our little powder room floor with a chandelier about this big from Venice. So they're
oh,
really nice contrast, the funky old hand painted ceramic and the Murano glass chandelier. And then
right.
on the wall behind the toilet are four sepia photographs of the house from the 30s with the
Mm.
owner, the woman who was born there and died there, showing off their new tractor they were so proud of, four
Oh,
different ones. So you could see the house before and after in the 40s,
yeah. Yeah.
the beautiful modern Venice and the old charm of Piemonte tile,
Yeah.
stuff like that. You don't have to be a designer just to love these different mix and match kind of accents. They go wonderfully
Yes.
together.
I think of Italy as known for being steeped in the ancient world, but with an eye very much toward the contemporary. And you think about, just picture is the out of central casting beautiful Italian woman with her black hair flowing behind her on a Vespa in her high heels, traveling through the ruins in Rome, right? That to
Exactly.
me is Italy in a nutshell. And for the design perspective, their design is very forward looking, incredibly modern, using sometimes modern materials, but often old materials in very modern ways. And you mentioned the Murano glass from Italy and from Venice, and that's a great example. When we were there touring a Murano glass factory, it was incredible how this centuries old practice on this island off the coast of Venice, it's not even in Venice proper, makes glass still, but in these whimsical, outlandish kind of shapes and these colors and everything. And so therefore, I think just by looking around where you live, oh, old and new, they work together. And I'm
It's
so
very much.
glad you've done that in your home. It sounds like the perfect marriage.
You're right. It's very classical. You have the Colosseum and the columns and very playful as well. You see these women with these gorgeous jeans and they have to have diamonds on them somewhere. They just can't resist it. And it's so Italian that they can pull that off, that they
Yeah,
can
right.
wear, it doesn't look like Las Vegas. It looks so classy.
You've taken all of your cues from the home itself and the surrounding countryside and then the country at large. And it just sounds beautiful. And you can see pictures. Again, if you get the book, there are QR codes at the back of every chapter so you can see photos. I'm wondering what little thing or what one thing did you bring from San Francisco into your new home?
You're going to make me cry.
Oh,
I have an old chair that was my grandfather's, but more importantly, it was my dad's. And
oh,
it sits right by the fireplace with these lovely wooden hewn arms.
yeah.
And my brother-in-law and I went into Alba and bought some fabric that is so
Oh,
Italian and wild
oh,
and fun and flocked and bright colors and in a light, bright colors with a pop of red and whatever. It's just a bright, crazy color. And it just sits there and I look at it and I feel my dad. And it's
oh,
the one chair that everybody likes to sit in. All the
oh,
men just come right and they sit right there because they feel like a duke or something. It's real comfortable and really lovely. So that I would not have been without. And then I have a beautiful ceramic chinois, no, with a cloisonne container of my mother's that I put my stuff in. So I know I'm home. I've got my mom and dad with me. It's pretty cool.
oh. Wow, that's wonderful. And the reason why we hold on to some of these things, especially when
Who
we move
knew?
in. You couldn't take very much with you. I know you had the bed sent over. I know you had your car sent over. You're not
Very
taking your
small.
whole house with you.
No,
So,
very small container. So only things you truly love, which
yeah,
were those two. So that's
yeah.
a really great question. I hadn't thought about that.
Well, Barbara, this has been such a great talk. I don't want to give away the bulk of the book here. There are twists and turns in this story, but mostly it's just a lovely read. It transports you. It starts making you think, huh, what am I going to do with this stage of my life? I just really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Sandra, you are so kind. Thank you so much for having me. And I have to say, I've never heard somebody read my book back to me until today, and it gave me goosebumps. That was really
Oh,
cool. It's been
oh, good.
a real joy to be here. Thank you.